The following is a presentation of the Chicago Bears Network and ChicagoBears.com. Download the Chicago Bears official mobile app for up-to-the-minute Bears content every day. And now, welcome to Bears All Access, your all-access pass into Chicago Bears football. Bears All Access is brought to you by IGS Energy and sponsored by Athletico Physical Therapy and CDW.
Good to have you alongside, everybody. Bears fans out there, NFL football fans in general. We'll talk about all of those things tonight because there's more football coming, apparently, next spring. Not one, but two leagues now. We'll walk down memory lane with my broadcast partner from News Radio 780 and 105.9 FM WBBM, Tom Thayer. But the focus tonight is the Bears after a week of OTAs, Big Tom. We got a chance to see them on Wednesday up at Hattles Hall like we will next week, and we'll touch on those topics with Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio coming up at 6:08. And then at the bottom of the hour, one of the Bears' rookie classmates, Khalil Herbert, the running back we're very impressed with. He'll be joining us at 6:30. Tom, good evening. How you doing?
Big Jeff, I'm good. It's exciting to see the guys on the field in their cleats inside of a huddle, breaking the huddle, running patterns downfield, looking the defense that Sean Desai is going to put together and see what his formula of attack is. So there's a lot of building blocks that when you're witness to from day one, it's interesting to see how these guys throughout the process, within a week, within 3 weeks, and then when you get ready to go to training camp. So it is an exciting time, but it's no more exciting than for the draft choices, for the young guys, the guys that are fighting for position, some of the guys that have been traded to the Bears. So, it's exciting to look at the development, the growth of some of these young guys.
And a bummer for Daz Newsome. Suffered a shoulder injury, so he's going to be out a bit.
I feel bad for him. Obviously, that's a part of the game, and, Daz has to show some resiliency here that he's willing to do the work that it takes to recover from this injury. But it's not going to diminish what he's capable of achieving in the long run of his career. You go up and you try to make a catch for your quarterback and you awkwardly fall down, and, that's always the threat of the game. However, I still think we're going to be able to talk a lot about Daz Newsome and the development of his career.
All right, here's what we do on these shows, right? We take a look back at what's gone on over the course of the week in terms of interviews that were made available to the media, and Andy Dalton was one of them as he met the media for the first time as a Bear quarterback and got a chance to see him and watch him play, and already earned the nickname of the fiery redhead from head coach Matt Nagy.
Well, I think it comes with experience and understanding how things should look, and playing the position of quarterback, you're obviously going to have a voice, but then you throw the experience and how long I've been doing this into the mix too. And, I think you're in that leadership position and you want to make sure things are going the right way. And so I'm sure that's what he's alluding to with the fiery redhead comments. But, I'm trying to do everything I can to make us the best team that we will be come the fall.
And frankly, I want my quarterback to be able to challenge the skill position players, the receivers, to be in the right place at the right time. It can't just be the head coach. It's got to be the quarterback.
This is not only the receivers, Jeff. I remember getting yelled at, scolded face-to-face by Jim McMahon at Denver Broncos Monday night game. And it still lingers with me because he's the guy that took the abuse of my mistake. And so when you talk about Andy Dalton, and now he's trying to take this big glob of clay and mold it into an offense that works efficiently, hey, man, everything can't be said as he's trying to earn the sash of Mr. Congeniality. It's about making sure this is the best team possible come week one against the Rams as their opponent. So that's kind of the fun part of being involved in sports, and one of the challenges is that you're going to get yelled at in front of your peers by one of your peers, or you're going to be encouraged. Whatever the case is, it's always a part of the growth process.
All right, what'd you do in that Monday night game?
I gave up a sack, I think, to Michael Dean Perry, to Jim McMahon on a 3-step drop that he should have never got hit. And I had just enough time to turn and yell, "Look out." And he hit him, and, the abuse just
you
keeps
got
on
beat
coming.
across your face or bull rush?
No.
'Cause if you tell me bull rush, man, I'll be disappointed.
Grab my wrist and turn my body, and the rest was McMahon's history of getting hit.
I like to hear these old stories. We'll get more from Jim Miller coming up next. This is Bears All Access with our producer, Sean Anderson. I'm Jeff Joniak with Tom Thayer on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. And welcome back to Bears All Access. We are brought to you by IGS Energy. Choose clean energy for your home at IGS.com because every good choice adds up to a better world. With Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak welcoming in from SiriusXM NFL Radio's Moving the Chains, Jim Miller, the former Chicago Bears quarterback. Good evening, Jim. How's this June 3rd treating you?
Everything's going good, Jeff. Tom, always good to talk football with you guys. Yeah, a lot going on. It never ends in the NFL. It's always 24/7. It'll start to quiet down after these last OTAs and mini camps finish up, but it sounds like a lot of teams are getting just the volume of players. There is a high attendance rate, and that's a good thing, and it tells you that the players are motivated to go and put in the work and have a successful season.
Yeah, as a football fan, I don't want it to slow down. I don't mind if it goes right up. Maybe a couple weeks in July. Let me have a summer vacation. But other than that, I'm good with it. I'm going to poke this to you in your direction here with Andy Dalton and what Matt Nagy had to say yesterday, Jim, about his job. And what I essentially call, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way at all, but he is a point guard type of quarterback, and I think the explanation is really there on the table with this bite from Matt Nagy yesterday.
We have a lot of young wide receivers, and so they're seeing that if you don't get your tail to that spot, he's going to throw the football. And if you're not there and it's an incompletion and it's your fault, then we got to figure out, are we going to keep letting that happen or are we going to get somebody else? And that's what I think is neat to see. And Andy, he's got red hair too, so he's got that fire. He's like, so he'll get pissed now and tell you if you do something wrong, he's going to tell you. I kind of like that.
It sounds like a Jim Miller quarterback right there. But in terms of the fiery emotion that players like to follow, in terms of that, is that selling him short at all when I say point guard quarterback? Because distributing the ball, getting it to the guys that are open, and being there on time and on target.
No, I think Andy's a better athlete than what people give him credit for. The guy's got 22 rushing touchdowns. It was interesting. We had a caller call in, thinking really highly of Jameis Winston in high regard. He thought Jameis should be rated the third best quarterback in football for his athleticism. And I'm like, what? I'm like, he goes, well, probably just Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes are ahead of him, and that's about it. And I go, what about guys like Aaron Rodgers, who was the league MVP, or the athleticism of Josh Allen? And so I went through in some numbers last night. I would put Andy Dalton ahead of Jameis too on that list. Derek Carr, all these guys. Andy's got 22 rushing touchdowns for his career, so he can move around, he can extend plays, and he's always been a good athlete. But I think what's critical about Andy, he's always been a very good processor of information. People forget he was thrust in the lineup early. Carson Palmer was retiring. They drafted Andy Dalton. He had to play right away, and he played well his rookie season as a Cincinnati Bengal. So, but Andy knows, too, because he's a timing and rhythm guy, because he is an accurate passer, he needs those guys to be at that spot when he can get rid of the football. There's always that time clock that is going off in your head, and I think he's got the leadership, and he can elevate guys, their play to bring them to that level. Again, he's led teams to the postseason numerous times and has played at a very high level his entire NFL career. He kind of gets shortchanged how good he really is as a quarterback.
Tom, how's that impact the O-line?
Well, the O-line wants to count on the offense is going to move according to the direction that they have, been instructed up front, whether it's protection or the running game. And Andy Dalton, they have to know that he's going to be in the area where they expect him to be in, depending upon the design of the protection. When you have a quarterback that you're uncertain where he's going to be behind you, you're just susceptible to giving up sacks. It changes the most dominant part of the protection. So, again, it's a part of what great quarterbacks are capable of, where you want them to be. You want to make sure they're in the right position when you break the huddle according to the protection.
All right, and high praise for Justin Fields from Matt Nagy.
All Justin wants to do right now is football. That's all he cares about. He just wants to be the best quarterback he can possibly be He wants us to be able to teach him everything we can teach him. He wants to be able to learn from Andy. Coach Flip and Coach Laser are doing a phenomenal job right now, man. You want to talk about obsessed and passionate about helping these quarterbacks out. So it's neat to see. You feel it, and we just got to keep that going. And again, work to that plan that we talked about with all those quarterbacks, and then just let these guys grow at their own pace, and then let us be able to evaluate them.
Quarterback. That's the greatest thing about these guys being in the building, because every second they're sponging the information they're getting from all the different directions, all the different coaches. They're able to talk to the players about football, and you want to be able to talk about your job and how it affects their job. And when you're a young quarterback like this and you're in the development stages of the NFL, whether it's talking about the cadence, talking about the huddle, talking about the running game, the passing game, it's nice to see that you have a guy that his main sole interest right now is football.
And Jimmy, sandwiched between two veteran quarterbacks that are accomplished, with Andy Dalton as the starter and Nick Foles as the number 3, and that conversation took place. It's probably never easy to hear, is it?
Well, yeah, it is never easy to hear, but I think they're going to break up the reps, and he'll get a ton of work. Again, I don't think they want to. They're trying to force feed him, but yet they got to go at the pace where the players, willing to have growth every single day. And I think having the veterans, because I think both those guys are great teammates. I have heard nothing but great things about Nick Foles, no matter where he's been, about his locker room presence, how helpful he is as a player, and Andy Dalton. I mentioned Paul Alexander, who coached with him, raves about Andy Dalton and his ability to lead and help out teammates. So this guy is insulated very well with guys who have played the game, have had success in the league, and know how to approach the position and know how to prepare themselves for games. So out of ranking all the quarterback rooms this offseason, Bears are definitely in the top 10, and I'm just waiting to see what happens down in Houston, because if Deshaun Watson's no longer there, Bears would be in top 5 of quarterback rooms around the NFL. That's how good I think that position is right now for Chicago.
One thing I don't like about OTAs, if there is such a thing, of not liking them, because as a football person, I like to see everybody on the field, but the media gets 1 day a week out of the week-long festivities, and then that's their snapshot of performance, who's doing well, who's not, and sometimes that gets lost in the conversation a little bit for the readers or the listeners, and who's there at the given time. That doesn't mean they haven't been there. We don't have the attendance of what exactly is there, but yesterday there was one defensive starter in Roquan Smith, so a lot of the defensive guys not. I'm assuming that's a story that people are going to latch onto. But Jim, don't you think that's one thing the league makes a little bit unfair on its own players and coaching staffs?
What, just the
analysis is on one day, one week.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, guys that don't show up, I mean, they may have had something else planned that day. I mean, so I don't think you can really just take that one day as a whole. It's really about the collective. If a player shows up, typically teams want you to be there 90% of the time, and I think for the players, most of those players are coming in right at that number at about 90% of the time, because you got workout bonuses and things tied to the contract that where a player can make some money. So they're going to make certain that they do their part in order to get compensated, but yet they're still gelling with the team and creating that camaraderie, things that are so important that you've got to build in the offseason. And primarily it is geared more towards the young players, the first and second year players that are looking to take a jump. You want the veterans there because they're the ones that pull those guys along to see how it's done, and they see how you're working and maybe the reps, and they're still breaking down the tape and see how the veterans doing it, and so that their process of growing can be brought along a lot quickly. So, I don't look at it that way. I've been pretty amazed at the participation rates of the entire NFL. I think, the NFLPA really program the players, you should opt out and all those things. And Bruce Arians kind of put it out there on the thing. Hey, man, if you're a veteran not coming here, these young guys, they're working to take your job. And so that factors in as well. And I think overall it's been a great motivating factor in why you've seen great attendance rates.
I was always motivated by the fear of losing my job. And if I was a veteran, if I was a fringe veteran, I'd be living at these OTAs. I'd be taking every possible rep that I could get. If I was inside of a defense that's learning from a new defensive coordinator, I would want to learn all the information efficiently and be on the field in order to get those no pad reps. In my football career, I've loved no pad football because it was the greatest time for camaraderie. Yeah, you were out there learning. Yeah, you were exhausted. You were going through conditioning, but there wasn't going to be any collisions that was going to change the course of your career. And I know Daz Newsome, fell awkwardly when he did break his collarbone. However, just the whole building blocks of no pad football is fun, and so I look forward to it.
All right, that's Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, Jeff Joniak as we move on here on Bears All Access. We're brought to you by IGS Energy here on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. This segment of Bears All Access is brought to you by CDW, people who get it. Jeff and Tom and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio is moving the chains with Pat Kerwin. And coming up in moments, running back Khalil Herbert, the Bears' 6th-round pick. Going to focus on our running game right now. David Montgomery yesterday was quite open and ripped open the curtain a little bit on his own performance in 2020.
Like I said, I don't think I was vocal enough, and I don't think I left it all on the field as I should have. I think I could have done better for my guys around me. I think I sold them for a little bit, but that's what the offseason is for me to go back and get to the drawing board and try to fix things that I felt as if I didn't do well on and just try to improve them. I know this year I'm not here to let my guys down, and I'm here for whatever may come my way.
Well, fellas, he wants to be more of a leader and be one not just for the running back room but for the entire team. He's got that in him. Obviously, that's what he was at Iowa State, culture changer type of guy. But the rare guy that admits that, I think I left a little bit on the table last year on the field. Quite the admission. He finished strong in the final 6. How do you take those comments, Big Tom?
I'm super impressed with everything I've seen out of David Montgomery up until this point. But now I'm even more impressed with David Montgomery from listening to him talk about his own performance and how he's not necessarily 100% satisfied and he has room for growth and improvement. Because, look, man, this guy's legit. He's a first, second, and third down back. He does everything that's required of him, and he does it at a high level. And just for him to inspire himself to work harder, it says a lot what he can do for the Bears.
Jim, sometimes you might have a guy that just says that, words are words, but, he backs it up. He is this type of player. I would not think anything other than the truth from him on this one and how he evaluates himself, because this goes back to his roots in Cincinnati growing up.
Yeah, well, we know coming out of college he broke a ton of tackles. I mean, that he was the number one player in the country from that standpoint. Overall, I'm with you, Jeff. I thought he finished real strong. I mean, he finished 6th overall in the NFL. He probably wants to get to double-digit touchdowns, thinks he's capable of that, and I think he believes he's capable of more explosive plays. He had 5 plus 20-yard explosive runs in 2 plus 40. You look at other guys around the league, they're ripping off like 4 when you got guys like Delvin Cook and guys like Aaron Jones, and I think David Montgomery has that type of ability where he can have more explosive plays. It's all got to come together as one. That was kind of disjointed in how the season was, but he did kick it in gear down the stretch, and why he finished so strong.
And he says he's working on his speed this offseason.
I've been working with probably the best speed trainer in the world. His name is Chris Corfus. He's actually teaching me how to run. I'm 23 years old, getting ready to turn 24 here soon, a couple of days, but I've not been able to run properly the entirety of my life. But me not really realizing how I didn't know how to run, he's definitely cleared that image up for me, and it's definitely helping me out a lot.
Another crazy admission when you think about it. Then our Mark Rohde had a follow-up question. What specifically has this individual, this speed coach, taught him? He said, well, I'd have to. It's like giving up my mama's chicken recipe, fried chicken recipe. I'm not going to do it. And, that's the competitive advantage. A lot of guys don't want to tell you exactly what they did in the offseason. But, Tom, that's an interesting takeaway as well from David Montgomery.
But I hope you're able to complement the weight room with the style of running that he's being encouraged to use. Because I don't, the one thing I don't want a track coach to tell me how to run fast and then it gets me out of the weight room. Because the recovery ability of David Montgomery, the abuse, his yards after contact, it's because he has such a strong, dominant running back frame. In the weight room is needed as much as his running ability. So I hope each complements each other and one doesn't take away from the other.
Well, like anything, I don't think you can assume everything. I remember a few years ago when Prince Amukamara admitted, he goes, we were questioning him about the lack of interceptions, and he goes, I really didn't learn how to catch a football till I got here to the Chicago Bears. And it was Eddie Donatel said, you figure a player is, this guy was on a world championship team with the Giants. You just assume he knows how to catch a football. And it was Eddie Donatel taught him how to, hey, if the ball's low, put your pinkies together. If the ball's high, put your thumbs together. And he got on the jugs machine and learned how to catch. And I think that year he got 4 interceptions for the Chicago Bears. So you can't assume everything. Just because David Montgomery has played running back, there's a technique to running where, how you pump your arms, that you can accelerate quicker and things like that. But he still has to come away with, things about avoiding tackles, and you're going to be at awkward angles. But the style and the technique of running, he's trying to better himself, and so I give him a lot of credit from that standpoint.
Hey, fellas, real quick before we hit this break, did you guys get and your exit interviews every year, or if you had them, because now it sounds like everybody does, and they get, this is what we want you to work on, or this is what you want to add this, lose this in terms of weight, or did you guys look yourselves in there and say, I need to do this specific aspect of my job better, and this is what I'm going to work on in the offseason? Tom, you first, and what is it?
To me, it was always, what is Clyde Emmert going to do with me in the offseason? How is he going to make me a stronger football player? And then we took it to the field, and we're able to convert weight room strength into running coordination.
Jim?
Yeah, I think, definitely when the Bears went to the West Coast offense under John Shoup, I knew I was going to have to work a lot on my footwork. I was kind of lackadaisical in my dropbacks, but in that system, because it's a lot of it is timing and rhythm, your feet have to be like pistons in an engine. And I literally, in one offseason, so that's all I did, is just a ton of footwork and drops and things like that. And I literally came back the next fall. I was at the training camp, and I'm watching myself on tape, and I'm like, that doesn't even look like me. I look like a whole new player. And it did. It looked like a totally different player from what I was, what I worked on, and then how I applied it after. And you definitely could see the improvement.
Coming up next, Khalil Herbert, Bears 6th-round running back, joins the program with Sean Anderson, our producer. I'm Jeff Joniak with Tom Thayer and Jim Miller here on Bears All Access on Chicago Sports Radio 670. This segment of Bears All Access is brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an appointment in clinic or virtually and start feeling better tomorrow. Welcome back to Bears All Access here on Chicago Sports Radio 670. The Score with Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, Jeff Joniak, and our special guest tonight, Bears rookie running back, and he's a good one, Khalil Herbert, joining the program from Virginia Tech after a career at Kansas. And Khalil, thanks for taking the time to join us. Now you're getting your feet wet and settling down, watching you both at rookie minicamp and then watching you at the OTA this past Wednesday. I commented to Tom Thayer, it's interesting when you read about a guy or watch a guy, but seeing him up close, you are a thick-thighed running back, and you are very impressive in terms of how you move out there. It's on a 5'9", 210 frame. I don't know if that's your current weight, but obviously you got a lot to you. Otherwise, they're not giving you the nickname Juice, right?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. I feel like just being able to be that size and that weight, but definitely being able to move and run fast helps me out, and that's kind of how I got the nickname.
2 questions. Is the gift of the size, are you a weight room invested guy throughout being a young guy, number one? And number 2, every complimentary thing I read about you until we have a chance to watch you is about your vision. And obviously your vision has to transfer well when you did transfer college programs. But how long does that vision take to catch up to a new system now that you're in the Bears system?
Yeah, I definitely think it just comes with reps. The same thing happened when I left Kansas to VT, just getting in the offense, getting comfortable with the names, the terminology, the formations, the plays. So then once you're comfortable with the offense, you're able to go out there and play fast. And just let your talents do what they do. So really just becoming comfortable with the offense, I think that'll start to slow things down for me and allow me to just go out there and play and use my abilities to help me out.
Well, Khalil, Jim Miller here. Welcome to Chicago. And you look at that, you mentioned transferring. You have just a breakout season. And what I love about you, dude, you don't fumble, man. I mean, you had over 500 carries, and you coughed up the rock only twice. Maybe talk about that, because your ability to break tackles and probably that asset alone, teams are going to love you, and I know the Bears are going to love you playing for the Chicago Bears. So where does that come from, and why is it such a successful season last year after you transferred?
Yeah, definitely I give the kudos to the successful season last year just to my coaches and my teammates at VT. They believed in me. They allowed me to go out there and play my game. And they pushed me a lot during the offseason and during camp. But the no fumbles, I definitely think it comes from my time at Kansas. Whenever on film the ball would get away from our body or anybody would fumble or anytime he could see the ball on film, we'd have up downs every 5 yards. So we do probably 500 or 600 yards of up downs after practice every day until people started taking care of the ball. So after that, it just
lead to pay, brother. That's
yeah.
I don't know if the listeners know what the up downs are, but how many you did? That's a pretty stiff penalty. You guys are pretty hard on yourselves.
Yeah. And, I mean, it helped because we didn't want to do up down, so we make sure we took care of the ball, and it translated. So,
Khalil Herbert, our guest, along with Tom and Jeff here on Bears All Access on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. With that vein of conversation, if you're familiar with Charles Peanut Tillman, right? Charles Tillman, one of the best cornerbacks in Bears history, arguably the best in Bears, and the Peanut Punch. So I know teams do practice. I don't know if the defense is doing that up at Hallis Hall these days, but that guy could do things I've never seen before, and therefore it's a namesake for him. That would have been a nice challenge for you. Up downs or the Peanut Punch, right?
Yeah, definitely. But that's kind of one thing we pride ourselves on, taking care of the ball. And make sure the defense doesn't get it. So it'll be a good challenge.
Lil, catching the ball going forward, it doesn't seem that you were, had a heavy-duty amount of catching the ball in college. So when you talk about developing that aspect of your game, because it's something that's needed in the modern-day NFL offenses, is that something that comes with reps from the quarterback, from the jugs machine, or just, something that you're able to work on during your own downtime in the offseason?
Yeah, it definitely comes from both. I feel like just working on it on my own in the off season, making sure I'm catching the ball, and I'm getting reps, just mentally catching either tennis balls or footballs. But then getting with the quarterbacks, before practice, after practice, during practice, making sure that I'm looking the ball in, just making sure I'm doing the little things to catch the ball. And it definitely helps. But catching the ball has never really been a problem to me. I've always been able to do it, just never got the opportunity to do it that much in college, but definitely looking forward to being able to do it here.
Well, it's hard to work on it now because you're not in pads, and what I mean specifically is, third down blocking or blitz, picking up the blitz and things like that. But what overall do you feel you need to focus on and want to take your game to another level that maybe you need to shore up a little bit more?
Definitely pass pro. Definitely just really learning my assignments so I know everything I got to do. Pass protection, learning my assignments so whenever I get the opportunity, I'm ready to go. So I'd say those two things are two things I'm really focusing on, just getting better at, and definitely helping out on special teams, just learning my role, learning my job, and trying to learn as many different positions as I can to help the team.
Khalil Herbert, our guest, one of the Bears' sixth-round draft picks out of Virginia Tech, a Florida kid, born and bred. And I'll tell you, I know this lingers with players, and I'm certain it's in the back of your mind, if not. But, when I think of guys, all-purpose guys, and I talked to Tom about this today, I'm thinking about guys that put up a lot of yards from scrimmage or all-purpose yards, and you were great at that, obviously. You led the ACC in all-purpose yards in 20. But you think of Alvin Kamara, you think of Dalvin Cook. And then the guy that's had the most in the last 2 years in the league, and I quizzed Tom on this because we don't see the Chargers much, but it's Austin Eckler from Western Colorado University, undrafted. Alfred Morris out of Florida Atlantic in his rookie year, 6th-round pick, 1,600 yards as a rookie. You'll hear the story about Terrell Davis, now a Hall of Famer with the Denver Broncos at Georgia, 6th-round pick. It doesn't matter, does it, where you're picked once you're here. You don't need to have the pedigree of a first-round pick. How do you feel about that when you hear some of those names?
Yeah, definitely. Those guys are guys that I looked up to growing up. I watched and kind of patterned my game after. But just seeing where they started, it's not where you start, it's how you finish. So, they took wherever they got picked up with a chip on and wore it with a chip on their sleeve. But they got an opportunity at the end of the day, and they made the best of their opportunity. So I'm trying to do the same exact thing. But really just, you got a foot in the door right now. It's what you do with that foot in the door. So just being grateful for the opportunity and going out and fully investing and taking advantage of it.
Khalil, what can you learn from the backs in front of you? Because David Montgomery is one of the best backs in the NFL at yards after contact, but that's also one of the positive evaluations that I've read about you, is they said the best back in the draft at yards after contact. Is that just something that comes with the territory, or could you actually watch tape of a guy who's good at it and learn something, or is it just something that you're good at and you get better at it every time you get that opportunity?
I definitely think it's a combination of both. Being able to watch guys and see different ways they break tackles, different ways they make people miss, is definitely something I do. But then again, it comes down to just, carrying the ball and getting used to breaking that contact too. So I definitely think it's a combination of both. But like you said, Dave, he's one of the best in the league at it. So being able to watch these guys in practice and learn from them has definitely helped me a lot in the short amount of time so far. I definitely think it'll continue to.
Well, what's the plan for you, Khalil, after the OTAs and everything ends here pretty shortly here in the next week? Will you stay in Chicago? Are you going back home to work with a certain specialist, or do you have really a program that you're going to attach to, and where you're going to do it at?
Yeah, I think I'll be going back to home. I'm looking for a place out here, and then once I find a place, I'll probably go back home for a couple weeks, just recharge, and then come back and be ready to go.
Khalil Herbert, our guest here on Bears All Access on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score, brought to you by IGS Energy. Last one from us before we let you go. We really do appreciate it. It's always interesting to me when I start doing the draft prep of where your journeys all begin as players. And, I knew you played at American Heritage High School, which was a star-studded program with great talent. Many of your classmates drafted around the National Football League, including Patrick Surtain, Tyson Campbell, and many others. This is a two-part question, but first, did that sharpen the steel in you, because there were so many great players in that program? You guys won state championships repeatedly. You were there only 1 year because you were at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, which people know, the Parkland tragedy back in the day. That was your first 3 years. What did those two experiences do for you as now an NFL player, both the tragedy and also the success of that program with other great players?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I transferred to Heritage. I wanted to play against. I wanted to play against the best in practice and compete against the best teams in the nation. I wanted to go there and show coaches in college that I'm one of the best backs in the state and one of the best backs in the country. So to be the best, you got to play with the best. But in practice, in games, it definitely helped. Just being there with top-notch guys. We always went at it. We always sharpened each other in practice, and it always helped. We'd always compete, and I think that's one thing that I definitely learned, and it helped me when I went there. And then the Parkland tragedy definitely was something, to this day I still have no words to kind of explain how it makes me feel. But just one of those things that, you kind of are a reminder of, and to be grateful for where you are and what you're doing. And to make sure that you love on people, because you never know when they're going to go, no matter what the situation is. So just being able to, after all that, I went home and was able to see everybody, but just being able to connect with everybody and make sure everybody's good and take care of people is kind of one of the things that ever since that day I'm kind of trying to do every day and make sure everybody's okay. So you never know what anybody's going through.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We appreciate having you here and being a Chicago Bear. I wish you nothing but success in what is an outstanding running back room, and I know you're going to be a big part of the Bears. We didn't even talk about your return ability because you can do that too. So we'll be looking forward to seeing how your rookie year winds up, Khalil. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Our pleasure. Khalil Herbert, our guest. We'll continue with Jim Miller and Tom Thayer after this break on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. The Chicago Bears Network presents Inside the Bears, brought to you by Verizon. Anthony Adams. I got to laugh because I got to tell you a story about Anthony. And Lauren Screen cover the world of Bears football on and off the field every Sunday night at 10:35 p.m. on Fox 32 Chicago, or watch anytime at chicagobears.com or on the Bears official app. Jim and Tom with us. Khalil Herbert. That's a pro right there. Love this kid. Very excited about what he's going to bring to the table, special teams and on the offensive side of the football in a crowded backfield. It's going to be great. That's a terrific room right now. But Anthony Adams, so you know what? Almost once a week, for some reason, fellas, on my iPhone, I will butt dial Anthony Adams. Out of nowhere, all of a sudden I see Anthony Adams, and I'm calling him, and I hurry up and hang up. So double A if you're listening. Hit me up one of these days. It has to have happened 10 or 12 times in the last month alone, and I don't know why.
How snug the jeans are you're wearing. You better loosen them up a little. Yeah, right.
It's me running. It's on my runs. I don't get it. But anyway, that's a
that's
sidebar.
how you
Jim
get
Miller.
into your car, right? And it goes to Anthony. He's the first letter in the alphabet, Anthony Adams, and right away,
First on the list.
So you're hopping into your car, and that's what's going on, Jeff. You got to move it to a different pocket. That's what I would suggest.
But maybe what's worse on this, the commentary is that he hasn't called me back. So not even checking on me. Maybe it's an emergency. So I'm certain Big Tom and
he's
Jim
on the
would
air
be
like,
giving...
oh, there's Jeff Joniak butt dialing me again. He knows you're not even there.
Hey, a great thing to check out, everybody. Tonight is the first debut episode of the behind-the-scenes 1920 football drive on chicagobears.com. It's outstanding. It's on other social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and it features the 2021 draft, the process, the rookie minicamp interviews with scouts about the pro day process, the pre-draft interviews with guys like Herbert, some mic'd-up segments. It's a really nice 30-minute show, and there's going to be 3 episodes of that. So a shout-out to Jordan Treadup and his crew for putting that together. All those guys in Bears Broadcasting do a heck of a job. All right, before we let you go, Jim, tonight, before we hand it off to Mark Grody and then Cubs baseball there in San Francisco, battle of first-place clubs, the news today brought a lot of emotion out of my guy Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, because the USFL is coming back. Out of mothballs after 4 decades, spring in 2022. They're 8 teams at a minimum, but if those 8 teams are in the cities that they were back then, they're going to have the original logos, the colors, all that. And then you got 2 spring leads now, fellas. So how's this working? Maybe I should start with Tommy because that's an emotional start for you, the USFL.
Yeah, the USFL played a really important role in the develop me as an NFL player because I had Hall of Fame coaches like George Allen. I had one of the most winning Super Bowl coaches in the history of the league, and John Tierlink as our defensive line coach, who taught me a lot about offensive line play. And it was instrumental in my development. But it showcases a lot of guys out there that are super hungry to play football. I could give you 100 names of guys you never heard of that played football in the USFL. That the only 3 years of professional football in their life was that USFL. I could tell you about 100 NFL veterans that it was able to extend their career because of the USFL. And then you have guys that I brought up today, Sam Mills, Montclair State, became an NFL great, all-time great. An all-pro guy in every way, shape, or the form, character, preparation, and play. And he would have never got a chance because he didn't pass the eye test. But I want to tell you what, if you want to take a linebacker in the NFL that stands about 5'6", he is one of the most dominant players in the history of the league. You look at the linebackers he played with down at New Orleans. In Vaughn Johnson was another guy that played in the USFL along with Sam Mills. So I think it plays an important role. I have guys from my high school, a guy like Ty Isaac, who has as much desire to be a running back in professional football as anybody that's in the NFL. but this is going to give him an opportunity. This is going to present an opportunity. And no matter what spring league you're talking about, there's guys out there that are just chomping at the bit for their one opportunity in life to see if they can make it from that league into the NFL, just like every one of these guys playing minor league baseball.
I want to see.
Okay, sorry about the reverb, everybody. Jim, they don't typically last these leagues, but I was mentioning to Tom earlier today, NFL Europe did. It was a long-standing thing, and you were in it. So you both have experience in other leagues. How did that impact you? And was it necessary?
Yeah, it was NFL backed, right? At that point, every team were allocating players. So every team basically chipped in like $1 million, I think is what it was back then. So, you could have a legitimate league that could function, and they were owned by European owners, but it was still, backed by the National Football League. And I agree with Tom. I mean, it was an avenue to get more reps. It was an avenue to hone your craft. And I definitely came back from NFL Europa, and I was more equipped and better equipped to step on the field and play. So, and I'm always for that. It's more opportunities for guys. It's not just players, it's coaches, it's officials, it's you name it, training staffs, equipment staffs, all that's involved. So it supports a lot of people, and so I think it's a good thing, and it'll be a good brand of ball, and we'll see how it's rolled out and how effective they are. I just want to know if Tom's going to roll out his Chicago Blitz. Does he still have his Blitz jersey and his Blitz helmet? I got to know if Tom still has those things.
Jim, listen, man, I got Arizona Wranglers, Arizona Outlaws, and Chicago Blitz. I am going to be Mr. USFL vintage when I go out there and I start pulling out my equipment and start sporting around. But, listen, everybody knows what the White Sox are doing. If you look at what your Mercedes did, in order to get his opportunity, I think he's in his 30s, and the road that he traveled in order to get to Major League Baseball, that's the same desire there's a lot of grown men that want to play football, and they're willing to get those reps in order to get themselves onto a football field, and it's always going to be their desire to play in the NFL. When I was playing in the USFL alongside some of the all-time greats and all the Hall of Famers that came from the USFL to the NFL, it was their goal to get into the NFL, just like it was my goal. So, listen, if it provides an opportunity or a spark in their life, or Jim talked about all the support staffings that will be hired, I'm all for it.
Well, Jim, you were on the Arizona Wranglers when the Philadelphia Stars won the championship in '84, but 62,000 in Tampa. So you remember that game because right after that, you're on the way to Platteville, right?
The next year. I played another year with the Arizona Outlaws.
Okay.
And came right to the Bears. I came from a Saturday night game that finished in Arizona State Stadium. I got in my car after the game, drove straight through to Platteville, Wisconsin, and started full pad training camp that Monday morning.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you just growing up, I was a huge USFL fan because here in our area, obviously the Michigan Panthers, Bobby Hebert was a quarterback. Anthony Carter was their star receiver, and he grew up and played locally right there at University of Michigan. So, and they won it all. I mean, it was USFL really. Maybe they started too fast, but they were trying to rival the National Football League. Certainly this model is going to be a little bit different for them, but it's a good thing overall for everybody.
Right, and 2 spring leagues, that'll be interesting. And as long as it stays in the spring, the NFL will not have an issue with it, I would think. And so more the merrier. Keep playing the game everybody loves. You got games being broadcast. Fox is going to be a part of that USFL package, so should be interesting. All right, fellas, we're running out of time. Jim, thanks as always. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, looking forward to it, and you guys have a great weekend.
All right, you too. Thanks as always to our score staff and our producer today, Sean Anderson, Jordan Tredup, and Dan Barilli, our Bears producers, and, of course, Khalil Herbert, Bears running back. Outstanding stories there. For Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Mark Rohde coming up next, followed by Cubs-Giants baseball. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. We'll have more react from next week's OTA from Hallis Hall. Thanks for listening. This is Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this Chicago Bears Network presentation of Bears All Access. Podcasts are available on chicagobears.com and on iTunes, or download the official Bears mobile app. Bears All Access has been brought to you by IGS Energy and sponsored by Miller Lite.